Mr. Jay Lee.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for your precious time. I'm Jay Lee. I'm from South Korea. Also, I'm known as a weird Korean guy who keeps following India startups. So I will tell you the reason why soon. But I can tell you, I've been really enjoying the whole journey with it. Yeah. Anyway, today, I want to talk about real encoded reality of India, and specifically within the startup scene. So, I'm going to decode it as an outsider who is from South Korea. So, let's get into it. You know, uh, when people think of South Korea, they think of K-pop or K-dramas. And many foreigners who visit South Korea, they visit here with very high expectations, and they ended up getting disappointed when they realize not everyone looks like just BTS. I'm sorry, but Korea is just the real life. It's not a K drama, and it's not a fantasy. So in Korea, the reality is a little bit darker than you think it is. There's only one correct way to live, and everyone runs toward the same goal. You know, in the same place, so competition gets very brutal, life gets harder, and the pie isn't growing anymore. And actually, it's actually shrinking. Our domestic market is very small. With just only 50 million people compared to India market. And almost everything is packed into Seoul. Literally everything, including economy and politics and other big corporations, and so on. No jobs in the regional areas out of Greater Seoul. So nearly half of the population have to live in the Greater Seoul area. By end of 2024, Korea's birth rate was 0.75. In Seoul, where most of young people live, it's way worse. It's only 0.55. So basically, we're disappearing, and our suicide rate is the highest in the OECD countries. It is a country far from happiness, honestly. This is the result from the way I say it. This is the result of blindly believing and following the encoded reality of what success should look like. So from now on, I'm going to decode the Indian ecosystem, especially the startup ecosystem, from a South Korean's perspective of view. So coming from that environment, India looks very different to me. Of course, India has its own encoded reality, especially in startup sense. But I started noticing things that are the there are so many things that are very opposites of South Korea, and those differences are very powerful. So let me try to decode them. First thing first, youth and ambition. India is very young and ambitious. The average age here is about 27, and they may feel so normal if you live here, but globally it's very rare. When it comes to South Korea, it's 47, and the gap is matter. The gap is huge. The gap matters. I've met many young Indians, some even 15 years old, and already building their startups. I see it in their eyes, honestly. The hunger and the fire and raw determination. These days, capital, talent, and technology are everywhere now. But this young and hungry spirit is not really. And India still has it. That is like a very real competitive advantage, believe it or not. And the second thing, the fear of rejection. Was an Indian man, and one day, one Indian man kept reaching out to me for a meeting. We finally had a call, and he said he helps students to polish and enhance their CVs. And he asked me to find him some clients. He offered me $5 to $10 per client I landed for him. And honestly, in Seoul, I cannot buy my lunch with $5 or $10. So I would say that was the one of the worst offer I've ever had. But the thing is, somehow he was so confident, insanely confident. He knew I was not going to accept that offer, but he asked it without any hesitation anyway. There's nothing to lose, honestly. But in South Korea, if you think about, if you think something is not going to work, we don't even try. We wait for a very guaranteed way and we look for the safe act. Here, I see something differently, honestly. The willingness to ask, no fear of rejection, and the boldness is not a weakness, it's a skill. And in business, especially, is a very powerful one. And the third, global mindset. So Korea often described as a Galapagos island. The reason being, we have a very unique ecosystem, but we are very isolated. We even uh, global services and applications aren't really used in South Korea, and we are the one of the best fast followers. So before global services enter South Korea market, we just build it for our own ecosystem, our own system, and we stay inside them. So when foreigners visit Korea, they struggle a lot because all the applications won't really work for them here, and it's very difficult for them to use our local ones. India feels very different. The founders I met, uh, you know, they assume global expansion from day one. And I've seen many startups set up their business when they start their startup for the very first time, and also they incorporate their business entity in different countries where their target market is. And the India diaspora is everywhere, whether you like it or not. Your network makes it so easy to going global. And look at the Silicon Valley. In many big tech companies, their CEOs are Indians now. And it will show you that you can do it also too. And when you see people just like you succeed in somewhere else, you start to believe you can do it as well. And Indians see this everywhere, so many people like them succeeding abroad. Some of them may not have grown in India, but identity and the culture and family values don't disappear. And the last one, the fourth one, the hidden gap. Lastly, despite of all of this, India startups are still undervalued from the way I see them. If the same team with the same idea started a company in the US instead of India, their valuation would have been doubled. I told this to global investors, and they all agreed with this. This is why global investors are obsessed with India market right now, and they can get a bigger equity for the same capital. I see this very closely when I connect Indian startups with global investors. One clear signal is this: Indians who studied and worked in the US or somewhere else are returning home. In Korea, talents leaving the country is a growing problem. But here, it's the opposite situation. The country is still undervalued and the room for growth is still huge. That wouldn't happen without real opportunity and the real upside. So, South Korea has experienced one of the fastest economic growth in history. But unfortunately, I was too young to live through that golden age. But in India, I feel something familiar, very familiar. It's not just the data or the analysts or the engineers. It's about the energy, the belief that tomorrow will be better than today, which I can hardly find in South Korea. It reminds me of the Korea I barely remember from my childhood. When young India founders, they come to me for advice. I always tell them the same thing. Don't ask for advice. The only real answer comes from action. And don't believe people who say, I tried this and it didn't work. Or don't believe people who say, this is how success works. Or maybe they'll say, this is just how life it is, or it is what it is. This is the worst mistake, believing other people's word without questioning them. The world changes fast. Something that was right before can be wrong today. And almost people don't know your situation, so they don't know your context and they don't know your resource. What kind of resources you have? So don't look outside. for your answers, but trust your execution only. Execution always builds experience. Execution always builds expertise. So my mentoring is very simple. First, I ask one question. What is your goal? And then I say, for the next 30 days, focus on just that one thing. Next, I ask them, what's the action will move you closer to that goal? And I tell them, do that action 100 times and don't come back to me. And you will never, until you finish your homework, you will never talk to me again. So this is how my mentoring goes. It's very action oriented. That's it. There's no single formula for success. And if there are 100 people out there, if there are 100 successful people out there are 100 different success paths. That's why action matters more than anything else. I can't say this enough, honestly. And one more thing. Today, founders also need the ability to get people's attention. This is everywhere. This is true everywhere and everywhere in the world. And the more and more founders raise their capital, raise their money even before building products or technology, simply because they build an audience first. We call this online distribution channel. So what you lack is not an IIT degree. It's not because you don't live in a tier 1 city. For those of you who will be watching this online in tier 2 or tier 3 cities, to succeed as a startup founder, you only need two things: the ability to execute and the ability to attract attention. That's it. Not just in India, everywhere in the world. So you don't need to graduate from IIT or previous privileged university to build a great startup. Someone in the Western tech world once said this: you couldn't build advanced AI models in India. That idea spread and they created another encoded reality. Then I saw 19-year-old, 3 startup founders who tried to build AI model and tried to compete with them anyway. They were fighting the encoded reality, but they were young and they were inexperienced, so nothing really worked at first. But in the end, one of the co-founders even left the team because nothing really worked. But they didn't quit. Slowly, traction appeared, results followed. One day, the story about them went viral on social media and so on. After that, investors' meeting requests didn't stop coming. And I was told that they had at least 100 investor meetings from the US or from the UK, from everywhere in the world. The best part is their co-founder who left came back after that. Just like I told you, you need an execution and online distribution channel. So this story is a perfect example. They've broken encoded reality with execution and the power of online visibility. Encoded reality judges you and it labels you. It tells you who you are and what you can do. But decoded reality is different. It doesn't care who you are and it is open to anyone who shows up and does the work. So, you may disagree with me. This is simply the India I have come to know through these founders. So, I will leave this with you with this one question. So, are you living inside the encoded reality that quietly tells you what you can do? Then you should think about it. If I have helped with you break even one of these encoded realities today, I will leave this stage very happy. So thank you so much for your time.